shut the fuck up. Know your fucking place, trash.
So getting into this first impressions, I want to let everybody know this is a recent purchase for me. This isn't from back when the game first came out, so there are updates to the game and obviously price changes since its release. And with those price changes is the main reason why I wanted to kind of talk about it and cover it today. So I've been playing Left Alive on the PS4, and I have to say, it's not as bad as I was expecting. That's not meaning that it was great or good, but it's actually turning out to be better than I went in with expectations. Now, initially when this game came out, it was harshly reviewed, and to be honest, for very good reasons. However, recently it went on sale through Amazon here in the United States for $10, $9.99, and I decided to grab it. Firing up on my PS4 Pro, it definitely gives you these vibes of Metal Gear Solid. I've never really been into the Metal Gear series itself, but I've watched many gameplays, and it gives you that feeling not only from how the game operates being a third-person stealth action game, but it also includes these character models that also remind me very much of a Metal Gear franchise. Now, the story itself follows two individuals at the very beginning of the game, Mikhail and Olga. Mikhail is a rookie in the military, and Olga is a ex-military in the police force now. Later on, you do get a third character that is a convicted murderer, and he's trying to clear his name, but I won't go into that too much because of plot reasons. So the game starts off with you playing as Mikhail and end up in this war-torn city all of a sudden. A surprise attack from a neighboring country causes your country to just be in a panic, and you are trying to scrap together who's alive and who's not, and trying to save yourself and possibly civilians along your way. At the same time, Olga is actually getting ready to visit some slums areas to look for this professor and ends up getting in the same bombardment of this invading country. Now, at some point, both of these characters do meet up and they kind of cross paths, and then that's when the third character comes into play and you get to play as him for a little bit, and that's about where I'm at. It's about 3, almost 4 hours into the game. One thing I would recommend before even firing up the game is probably changing your difficulty to casual. This is going to give it more of an action-based versus a stealth-based, where bullets and gunshots actually do more damage to your enemies. You find more bullets and ammunition in the world, and overall makes the game a little bit more manageable. A lot of people talk about going on the normal to harder difficulties, and the game just becomes almost unplayable because enemies take so many headshots and you just don't have enough ammo, and if you're seen, it all goes to crap real quick. Now, to kind of cover every main base of the game itself, when it comes to the world, I actually think the world itself is pretty good looking and functions really well. We get to visit a war-torn city, as I spoke before, to the slums, kind of just a little village area, to different parts of the city, and some backtracking in there with the characters as well. To the underground sewer areas, and again, I feel like all this works really well for it. And on that note, the story itself is actually, in my opinion, pretty strong. At least I'm interested. It's keeping my attention, and I'm pushing forward to a point that I'm like, okay, I'm actually really getting into this. When it comes to other parts of the graphics, characters, while in the third-person view, are kind of stiff looking. They just don't really have much of a movement to themselves. Enemies themselves kind of have this look of them of the Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, the robots. They got kind of this different shaped head on them, and it's their mask and everything. And again, they don't look bad. They're pretty generic when you boil them down, but the models themselves are very stiff. However, in contrary, I feel like in cutscenes, the game actually looks really solid. The characters look really, really good. And while the voice sync looks a little bit off on the mouth movements, it just doesn't look as natural, I feel like the models themselves look great. And for the most part, I feel like the voice actors and actresses are pretty good. They're not going to win any awards, but I expected a lot worse. When it comes to gameplay, this is probably where the game really starts to fall off of anybody's lists. This is a stealth-based game that can be either really good in stealth or really bad in stealth. There are times going through the maps themselves that the stealth sections work really great. There's other times, though, that the enemy I feel like, can see me through any kind of material. And once they see you, they alert the Tri-County area. It just feels like everybody on the map knows where you're at. Now, you can run and hide and try to shake them off. You just got to make sure they don't see you jumping into a dumpster or a building. And usually after a few minutes, that them looking for you stops. But that's where the switching to the casual mode really is nice. Most of the time, enemies are more manageable in this mode. You can take more damage, and overall makes the game just a little bit more enjoyable, especially because the AI can be a little wonky at times. You will run into enemies of troops with assault rifles, shotguns, shield guys with grenades, to drones that patrol around, and then they kind of shift into this little turret bot that drives around on a wheel, to the huge mechs. If one of these mechs sees you, doesn't matter what mode you're playing on, unless you can get to a good angle, you're gone. I mean, they just obliterate you, and for good reasons. I'm not going to discredit that at all. You do also run into some tanks now and again, and they're pretty easy to deal with on hiding and just breaking their line of sight. But for the most part, I feel like the enemies do give you some varieties, especially being that this is a war-type game. It works well enough, but sometimes, yeah, the AI is just garbage. Speaking of the AI, her constantly telling me an enemy is approaching is freaking annoying. This is unacceptable. I don't mind being told once or twice, but this is a constant every so many seconds when an enemy is in your vicinity. Even if you're going up to kill that enemy, she is announcing this, and it is frustrating. This needs to be silenced, if at all. Have it. I don't even think it's necessary. The game does give you these little red lines kind of around the border of your TV to kind of notify you of an enemy nearby. I don't mind the first time it popping up, but it doesn't need to keep reminding me. One thing I really did like was the troop movement. Every now and again, you'll get this announcement from your AI telling you that troop placement has shifted. And basically what that does is they kind of shifts how enemies are on the map. Not usually a huge shift, but some areas that maybe you've killed everybody, all of a sudden there might be one or two guys there. This is a welcomed thing for me personally because this keeps it moving. You have to keep moving. You can't just go through the map and kill everybody and just waltz out of there. This makes it so you have to keep your objective moving at a decent pace, or you might get caught in a situation that enemies are there when there wasn't before. When it comes to side quests and following your main mission, you do have the option to helping civilians escape. Now, this is where the game is not too bad. I actually like this portion. Now, you run into these civilians, and sometimes through talking to them, you can convince them to get to safety. You can mess up and they won't go, and that just affects the gameplay somehow, supposedly. You basically have to clear a path or help them safely get to these bunkers. And this is where the mini-game kind of starts going into play. Especially in the sneaking portions, this can be very difficult. Honestly, I usually just clear out all the enemies or be a distraction towards them and let the civilians kind of go. You can tell the civilian to stop and start easily, and you can also do it right from the map as well. And again, I feel like this actually works really well for the characters and overall very well for the storyline. Gunplay is mixed. There are times that the guns work really well, and there's other times that they don't. Playing on casual, I usually use the handgun and go for headshots, and I'd say about 80% of the time you get a one-shot kill, which is understandable, you're headshotting. And I get that with the 80-20%. I'm not asking that every headshot be a kill, but the gunplay can be mixed. There are times that it works really well, sometimes it doesn't. The spray on some of the automatic weapons seems to go all over the place, and it can be kind of frustrating on that. There is a crafting system to the game where you'll craft healing items to bombs, grenades, turrets, all sorts of manners of things, and it works okay. I don't mind this. I actually like this because you'll find items strung out through the city that you'll collect, and you can turn those into usable items. Now, your character does have a weight system to themselves, and you have to keep that in mind. So your guns waste so much, your healing items waste so much, your everything takes some weight. And you do have item boxes you can store extra items in and come back for them later. Works just fine. Now, speaking of the item boxes, usually right around those item boxes are save points and healing stations. Every healing station seems to have a couple full heals in it, and for the most part, these save stations are basically your only way of saving the game. So you have to definitely be mindful if you're doing a lot of things or have a possibility of dying up ahead. I recommend using these save points as often as possible. Probably one of the hardest things to get over in this game is the enemy AI. It's just really rough. There are times that I've spent several minutes trying to run and hide because all of a sudden I was seen from somewhere. They don't function well. I've seen them jump and skitter around. It just doesn't look good. It doesn't function well. One-on-one, usually it's not too bad. But the enemy AI just sometimes stands around. They get shot in the head from a distance. They don't even react. If they have somebody next to them, half the time they don't react. Other times they react. It's very inconsistent, and that's probably the hardest part about this game, minus the sneaking as well. I don't find the sneaking to be a dependable way to get around on the map. I just spent a lot of time shooting things. Now, to kind of wrap the game up as a whole, I feel like there is a good story here. I feel like the voice acting and cutscenes are decent. Everything else is kind of a mixed bag, and this is where the game fails. The combat is meh. The stealth is mixed bag. The enemy AI is mixed. There's just too much of a mix here to really recommend the game. However, at $10, so far I feel like I'm getting my $10 of value. Again, I'm about 3 hours into it. On average, it seems most people are between 8 to 9 hours of gameplay. I just really wish that it was put in the oven to bake a little longer. So that wraps up my first impressions for Left Alive. Until some footage starts posting, here's a link to some other first impressions I've done. And if you like what you see and you want to see some more, check out the link to your right. That'll take you to the channel itself, where we have tons of videos going on over there. Until next time, you guys, stay frosty.